Just then, the hero remembers Master Alvin Sem's words, tells Yulia to listen close, and asks her what's actually the strongest thing ever, crazy, powerful magic, or an army that can't be stopped. But he said the real answer was girls, because let's be real, nobody can resist them. He thought he was just seeing things because he was wasted. But now he's starting to realize this is actually happening. The elf let him lean on her, and in that moment, the boy felt like they were totally unstoppable. He was totally loving it, and the other girl just grinned, promising to take him straight to paradise. He actually enjoyed it since he couldn't even fight back, and while the girls chattered, one told the other to tie him up super fast and as tight as possible. The tall girl shouts that they're moving out, and while the other guy pulls a cart with a tied-up hero, the guy is just wondering if he's actually being kidnapped. Our hero was 100% sure that the dumb prince was the one who ruined everything. But then we flash back 3 years to when the kingdom of Zweig was fighting everyone around them. They were basically one step away from winning when a voice from inside the carriage asked how the chase was going. Prince Ariel, the leader of the Second Army, sat there looking totally annoyed that his magician Yuli was talking back, but Yulia kept pushing and warned him that this whole chase was definitely a decoy. The wizard warned that the rainy forest at night was a total mess, and they'd be in big trouble if they got chased, but the prince just told him to shut his mouth. The prince snapped that wizards are just scouts, not masterminds, making Julius yell that he was crazy for sabotaging a fight they could actually win. Meet our hero, Julius Castell, the court's top magician, who's currently getting screamed at by the prince for doubting his royal authority. Julius is dead sure they're walking into a trap. The prince shut him down, calling the mage a washed-up fool who was totally killing their hype for the war. The soldiers started trashing him for being a low-life peasant, and he almost lost his head for insulting the royals. But Julius just thought about all the scouting and sabotage he did totally alone, so Julia declared that saving the soldiers mattered way more than the throne, even if the crown prince was winning. And this made the third prince absolutely lose his mind. The hero's fans told Arioff he wouldn't be rushing if he were in their shoes, and he got so mad he slammed his sword right into the chessboard. He pointed his sword straight at the hero, yelled that he was totally done with him, and told him to get lost and go home right now. Our hero knew he was right, so he just saw the guy as a total weirdo, while the prince screamed at the mage to get lost and called Yulia a dirty thief. The hero thought the prince was a total idiot who was going to make them lose, so he asked if he was crazy, but the prince just told him to shut up, leaving the hero wondering if. Julius sighed and warned the prince that the enemy was still right behind them. But the prince just laughed, told the hero to move, and said he'd be put on trial for desertion the second they got back home. As the hero walked away, they all laughed and said he'd never find a job, but he just smirked and told them he'd see them in court before wishing them luck in the. They were screaming at him from the carriage, but he just stuck out his tongue and walked away, even though everyone in Zweig totally hated wizards. Strong warriors with swords were the ultimate heroes, while magic users were seen as super mysterious and hard to figure out. Just like the hero's master said, any idiot can swing a sword, but they've got no clue how magic works. Our hero totally agreed because his teacher was always right. Looking at the brutal weather, the hero knew the soldiers wouldn't survive until morning, and even though these guys were elites, they were freezing and hated leaving their lives up to luck. Our hero pictured the prince's face and got so mad he started grinding his teeth. But even after chasing him away, the kingdom of Zweig still won the war. The Second Army got totally ambushed when the enemy used the land against them and absolutely wrecked them. But things were only getting worse for our hero, especially when the prince started screaming that Julius was the one to blame for everything. He yelled that it was all the mage's fault for ditching them, since they lost their scouts and walked straight into an enemy ambush. He pointed straight at the magician, shouting that the prince was totally innocent and that this whole mess was actually the magician's fault. This clueless prince pinned everything on Yulia, and she couldn't believe how his warrior's pride had just vanished. He got into a massive argument with the judge for siding with the royals, so the judge fired Yulia from his court mage job and banished him to the potion factory. The master couldn't help Yulia with this one, but he did save the hero from execution by getting his elite mage sent to work in a potion factory instead. 3 years fly by, and our hero is stuck working in a total dump with rats running all over the place. He cleared his head and locked in the second he was called over from Julius's side. 3 guys are standing right there, with the tall one asking how long he plans on doing that, the second telling him to get over here now, and the third saying he'll never finish today, making the hero sigh at how annoying these alchemists are. Julia's recipe is actually pretty simple. You just toss raw water and parts from beefy underground demons into a giant tank, melt it all down with magic to get the essence, and our hero is... Other alchemists kept his project going, brewing up tons of healing potions. Over 200 guys worked non-stop in shifts for basically zero money. They started screaming at the hero, demanding the hero just laughed at their important government project, calling it a total joke and a massive waste of cash. Everyone called Julius a total joke who talked pure nonsense, saying he was just a basic mage acting smart. And some even yelled that he wasn't a real alchemist and should stop pretending to know everything. The hero jokes about how much they're talking, but the tall alchemist tells him to move it because he's not trying to work overtime. The hero's mentor says the Zweig alchemists totally fell off once they started focusing on factories, and this is the mess you get when people turn bad. The hero knew he'd be the fall guy if anything went wrong, since he was working alone. But even though he pulled off a simple task that no other alchemist could touch, he still thought the prince deserved all the credit. The alchemists told the hero he wasn't welcome and should just be grateful for their work, but he totally snapped and told them to shut up, vowing not to let this place break him right as someone else asked what everyone was even doing there. Director Ree shows up after an alchemist snitches that Julius is back at it. And when the hero says he's 80% done, Ree orders the materials to be handed over right away, leaving the hero wondering if he's actually for real. Henry barked the order to move, and he had no choice but to listen. Since the potion was 20% weaker, he refused to take the blame, so the alchemists just laughed in his face and called him a total has-been as they walked away. Henry asks if he's on board, but the hero just says they're going to end up wrecking everything one day. The guy warned Julius to play nice if he ever wanted to go home. And when the hero worried about people complaining, Henry told him to ignore them and just keep cranking out gear, even though Julius knew it would cost the lives of innocent soldiers. The guy said they had plenty of backups to swap in, but the hero just frowned and asked him the same thing again. Our hero squeezed his fists tight as he realized the nobles were actually keeping tabs on them. Henry warned Julia to watch her step and reminded her that he still owed him for hiring that traitor. But they had. The guy told Julius to remember Gon was on his side, but Julius was totally confused. Then Honoré called the hero out for being lazy, saying he could get his court mage title back if he said this only happens if the prince gives the green light, then told Yulia to work hard and kill the rats as he left, while the hero felt like his whole life was totally cursed. He picks up the chewed-up apple and realizes a thieving rat is hiding in the factory, which are basically just gross, low-level monsters that'll steal and eat literally anything. He kept wondering where they even swiped all that food from, because it seriously looked like they were living a better life than actual people. Strange noises started coming from the wardrobe, and our hero was totally freaked out. Our hero nervously creeps toward the closet, shocked to find a massive rat inside, so he starts charging up his magic and tells the creature not to take it personally. He yanks open the wardrobe and finds a girl inside who starts squeaking just like a little mouse. Our hero was totally blindsided and had no idea what that thing even was. The Guantalabrans are these epic dungeons owned by the Kingdom of Zwaik, where adventurers hunt for treasure and bring back massive riches to the whole country. Healing herbs are a massive deal for the kingdom's big dungeon project because they sell like crazy and bring in a ton of cash. Our hero was totally confused about who this girl was, while she just kept squeaking like a little mouse. He lifted the staff right up against his forehead. The elf zaps the hero with a paralysis spell, freezing him right where he stands. He hit the ground shaking. Totally shocked she was a sorceress, but she just snapped that it wasn't funny. She was totally bored after pulling the exact same move again. The hero struggles to his feet and asks what she's talking about, but his body is still totally frozen. She just smirks and tells him not to even try since he can. Another girl walks up to see how it went, and Glenn tells her sister it was a huge win since they got everything they needed. But the boy is just standing there totally confused. She pulled him into a hug, said she was sorry, and told him he just needs to hang in there for a bit. The girls said it was time to hide, and while the hero was still totally lost, Clint started pushing the cart and joked that kidnapping was a great idea until Yule finally realized they were, and that's exactly how our hero ended up in this crazy spot. A ton of time passed, and he could finally move again, but his magic was still totally gone, and he was terrified they were going to kill him. Clen spots the boy is already awake, and right then, a second girl hops into the carriage, mentioning she knew the hero was basically indestructible before asking if he's finally snapped out of it, which Clen totally confirms. The kid was totally shocked that these two girls were actually his killers, but then he spotted their ears and realized they were elves. The tall one said it made sense to go after him since our hero, finally got his mouth free and yelled that he had no clue what they were after, but they better let him go right now if they didn't want any trouble. They slammed their hand over his mouth and made him promise to stay quiet, or else he was going to be in huge trouble. She's asking if he gets it, but he's totally distracted by how close she's standing to him. Julius tried to flex his status as a court magician, but the girl shut him down by saying he's just an ex-magician now, and that she actually felt bad for him. She roasted him for being obsessed with his old fame, making him think she'd totally lost it. Another girl yanked Clem away and told her to quit acting so happy, and when Clem tried to argue, Roger shut her down by saying it's wrong to enjoy someone else's pain, leaving Clem shivered and admitted she just loves watching people suffer, acting like it's totally normal. But the hero was sweating bullets thinking she's a complete psycho and that literally nobody else does that. Raja points out that the hero is only struggling because of the bracelets on his wrists. Our guy finally looks down and notices the silence bracelets he's been wearing this whole time. When they asked if he had any questions, he fired back, asking who they were, if he was being kidnapped, and if he was really their target. But then he warned them to stay away from his past, leaving the girls whispering to each other. They finally introduced themselves as Maple and Radha, revealing they're actually super hot elven spies. Clen bragged that he was right about the kidnapping, but the guy was totally skeptical about these beautiful weirdos, and Raja could tell just by looking at him that he didn't believe a single word. She shows him the proof, and he's totally shocked they actually swiped the sphere, knowing the director is going to be livid since that thing is a super expensive crystal of pure magic used to power. The hero says This might finally shut the factory down, while Clen just laughs. And when the girl points out they stole it from his bully, the hero agrees, but reminds her she was a bully. He remembered them calling themselves spies, but he thought they looked way more like bar dancers. The girls complained that the Swikes' outfits were way too heavy and said it was just normal gear back home. But the hero called them out for stealing royal potion secrets and said their whole act was a total joke. The girls were totally confused, so Gon told them he wasn't an alchemist, but a top-tier elite mage. But they just stood there in dead silence. Clen swore he wasn't wrong, and Raja backed him up, saying they'd been staking out the factory for a whole month to find the best alchemist. And it's definitely Julius. Maple was actually celebrating, saying potion making in this country was totally dead and a massive disaster, but the hero just thought she was being super rude. Julius explained he only mentioned being a wizard so they could brew potions on their own, while Rajas joked that he probably expected to be stuck at the factory forever working for the prince, leaving the hero totally shocked that they knew every little detail about him. Raja confirms it's all true, and even if he doesn't realize it, Julius is the one behind the whole factory and the insane amount of magic keeping it going. The kid fought back, yelling that he didn't care about the factory or their drama, and he just wanted to know where they were dragging him. Raja says they're taking him straight to Sampalu, the land of the desert elves. Our hero had never even heard of this place, and definitely didn't think he'd end up here, especially since he didn't even know where the desert was. Maple was so hyped to show him this beautiful glowing oasis, but the hero had absolutely no clue what an oasis even was. Radha wanted him working right in the heart of the country, and she hated that things had actually come to this. She walked right up to him and said they didn't want to make things any worse, so he just had to trust them. The guy agreed and told them to head out because he totally trusted them. He had no clue how he even got into this mess, and Clins just made it worse by mocking his sad face. Our hero realized his squad was seriously weird, being stuck with a fluff ball like Raja said everything was free, and the city leader even promised him a private workshop and an elven wife since it was way better than grinding for a tiny paycheck in a factory. Clen figures the ex-elite mage won't even care, but he just tells her to zip it. He just shrugged it off and told them he was already halfway out of that nightmare. Clen starts talking trash, bragging that he only got this far by flirting with the factory director and that they were basically ready to jump into the forbidden world together. The hero totally loses it and starts screaming. Raja said the city leader would explain everything soon and asked if he had questions, but the hero just wanted to chill before heading home, only for Clen to drop the bomb that he could never. Raja said it was obvious this guy was just a troublemaker who couldn't handle losing, so he snatched the most important stuff and vanished. The hero finally gave up and told them to take him wherever they wanted, and the Raja actually thanked him for it. Clen pulls out a bag and tells him to hop in, but when he asks why, she says the way to Shambhala is a total secret, so he just tells her to get. He yelled that they better cut the bullying and the body bags because he's a specialist and he's not about to get taken out like that. Glenn reminds Radha they're literally in the middle of a kidnapping, and once she finally remembers, the hero keeps being difficult, so Glenn just whips out his staff and freezes him with a paralysis spell. He collapses, Maple says goodnight, and Raja leans in to tell him she's been watching his hard work for a long time, and he can finally rest, while the boy just thinks she smells amazing. In the kingdom of Zweig, Shambhala is a total mystery that isn't even on the map, despite being right next door, and even a former court magician like him had no. People were shouting for him to wake up and asking if he was even still breathing. Our hero knew that if he didn't snap out of it right now, he was totally cooked. They whispered that this dark, hissing monster just popped up right in front of him. Our hero freaks out since he has no idea what that thing is, but Maple just tells him it's a desert long-tailed rat. She mocks him, asking if he's really scared. The girl tells him they're in Shambhala and they're actually hanging out at the mayor's house. Two people walked up right then, so Clen told the man Yuli was finally awake, and he was just super relieved that Yuli was safe. He bows low to greet our hero in Shambhala, introducing himself as Shamshel, the city's mayor. He flashed a grin and told the hero he hoped he was having a blast, traveling with his beautiful daughters. Our hero sarcastically called it a great program, especially that crusty sack they shoved on his head, while the other guy just apologized for the whole mess. The dad gave his daughters a massive "I told you so" look and reminded them he'd warned them this would happen. Clinton joked that Yule was actually trying the pain like a total masochist, but Yule screamed that he wasn't happy. He was just relieved to be fired so he could finally feel his hands again, and the guy just nodded and said that was good. Shamshil was done playing games and decided it was finally time to get serious. A ton of girls suddenly flooded the room, and our hero was completely clueless about what was going on. The man brought him the smartest and most beautiful girls from the tribe to keep him happy, and the boy was totally caught off guard. The guy straight up asked Julius who he was going to pick. The guy notices the hero's shocked face and asks if he'd already heard the news, but since the hero didn't realize how serious things were, Ken claims she already told him, and that Shimura promised that if he used his skills for their country, he'd get a massive reward, a perfect life, his own alchemy lab, and a wife who'd actually love him. So now, our hero gets to pick whichever girl he likes best. Julius asks how he can say that with a straight face. Then the guy asks what the hero is really fighting and if his wife has servants. But the hero just says only fancy nobles have help since he's just a regular guy. Shamshil was totally lost, so the embarrassed elf just stared at Yuli. She got all flustered just because he looked her way. Our hero was shook that they actually wanted to marry the guy. He dragged himself out of bed and sighed, realizing he had no other. The hero bowed and apologized to the mayor, explaining he wasn't an alchemist, but actually a court magician. Julia admitted it was true. Even though his daughter hyped him up, he'd never actually brewed a potion and was worried he'd be useless, but the man told him to look up and said the guy understood why Julius was worried, but his daughters never failed him. And when the hero noticed that trust, the dad admitted he was super proud of his girls. Rajas bragged that Julius could make an even better mix, and since Clen already swiped the supplies for it, the man begged the hero to stick around. Shamsul reveals a massive new labyrinth was just found under Shambhala, and the hero is totally shocked because they basically just stumbled onto a huge gold mine. The hero says this could actually wreck the Zweig kingdom and their dungeon monopoly. Then the man asks Julius if he's following along. The hero warned that if this was legit, they had to be super careful. Clen was totally confused and didn't get what the big deal was. The hero explained that 3 years ago, he warns them that if they mess up this deal, the whole world is going to hunt them down. And since the guy knows he's right, he's got a huge favor to ask. Shamsalu needed the hero to whip up a special potion from Shambhala. This dungeon is a total nightmare to clear, and you need a special potion to grab the loot deep inside. But throwing lives away won't help anyone. Luckily, the ingredients are right there in the maze, so they can just keep brewing and raiding until they're absolutely loaded. Time is running out, and if the Zvik military finds out about the labyrinth, they're definitely going to move in and trap Shambhala right in the middle of a huge war. The leader needs to get everyone in line before the fight starts, because if this cycle actually works, they might just save the whole country. The leader knew he was totally insulting his own magic, but he still went ahead and asked anyway. Shamsul begs the hero to become the alchemist who saves Shambhala, but the dude gets all tongue-tied trying to explain himself and his alchemy. Radha grabbed the hero's hand and begged him to help because they were totally desperate for his backup. Maple grabs his other hand and begs for help too, and since they picked him, he's totally down to back them up. Every elf in the room started begging for a shot, and while the hero knew Labyrinth Fever was about to change everything, he was worried that if they failed, things would go south fast, especially since Shamsul thinks the hero is a total genius with insane magic who always knows exactly how to handle things, and even the chief heard he's a kind-hearted wizard who's super serious about his work. The chief told him straight up that his daughter's words are the only thing that counts. He's got to realize that some things are way more valuable than just a pile of cash. Honestly, our hero realized they knew him way better than he knew them, so he snapped that they were the ones pressuring him and shouldn't complain if he failed. But the elves were already totally sure he'd pull it off. Our hero yelled that he didn't care if he wasn't an alchemist. He was still going to do whatever they wanted. He pointed right at himself and bragged that he was a total elite, making the whole crowd go absolutely wild with cheers. Shamshil tells the chief he doesn't want a wife, but the old man won't take no for an answer, so he just agrees to take them along as assistants instead. Our hero loses his cool and demands to take the chief's 2 daughters, leaving the girls totally shocked and confused by what he's even saying. The chief asked if he really wanted his daughters since he usually avoided getting married, and while the hero thought this would make the guy back off, the attacker agreed instantly, leaving Clen totally stunned that our guy's jaw dropped when both sisters actually agreed, and he was convinced they'd totally lost it. Shamsha just laughs and tells him there's no backing out now, since he already asked to marry his daughters, while the hero screams that the whole thing is totally insane. The boss needed to see Yuli was serious, so he asked the whole crew if they heard him, and they all shouted back, while our hero started wondering if he'd actually been The hero shouts to the girls, asking if they're ready to get married, but they've totally tuned him out, because Raja is in shock that he actually proposed, and Clen is just gushing about how happy she is. Raja asks if they're already married. Clem calls him a total creep. The guy is internally screaming for them to just say no, and Julius finally gives up, telling the boss they'll deal with it later so they can focus on the job. Shinchul called his daughters over to tell them they're working for him now, and they immediately asked him to hand it over. The sister was hyped to work together, but Maple kept trash-talking the hero until he was just standing there, totally confused. The girls show him the view from above, explaining that Shambhala is a massive trading nation in the heart of the desert, with cities built around every oasis to keep the money flowing. A massive new world of crazy mazes is about to pop up, and our hero is totally stunned because he's never even seen the horizon before. The boss said sorry and told the hero to wait until tonight to hit the workshop, so our guy asked him what the big deal was. Shamsul felt super awkward about missing some repair details, but since the hero was down to explore, they whispered something to Raja, and she suddenly yelled that the workshop was a total disaster. An elf named Slay suddenly popped up, bowed, and introduced himself as Yulia's secretary, then suggested they go check out Shambhala, and Yulia was totally down for the tour. The hero flashed a smile and asked if he could make a run for it, but the chief just laughed and told Maple to give him a tour of the city instead. The hero asks about her sister, but she's staying to watch the workshop, so Radha tells Klin to go easy on the guy. But Klin just says she'll handle it while the hero is already freaking out. Shamsil says the wedding hasn't even started yet, so they're totally fine. But Yulei just straight up insulted the old man and told him to shut his mouth. The hero stepped out of the shade and immediately started screaming about the crazy heat, asking what was wrong with the sun, only for Maple to tell him it was Shambhala. She says she's dressed for the heat, but the hero is rocking all black because it's actually freezing back in Zweig. As they head through the city, Glenn warns everyone to keep their clothes on because the sun is no joke. And when Julius asks how they're handling the heat, Glenn explains that desert elves are built for this thanks to their dark skin. She tells him he'll get used to the heat eventually, and when he asks if she's for real, she explains that the desert actually gets pretty chilly at night, which totally shocks him since he thought this place was just a giant oven. Maple asked him for some clothes, and he totally agreed since he'd be burned to a crisp long before he ever became an alchemist. She tells him they should hit the main market for a cool shop, but then asks if the sun is hurting him, and he screams that it is while she watches it happen. She teases him about how much longer he can hang on before he quits, but he just tells her to shut up and wonders when he's finally going to change. The clan asked if he wanted to escape the market, but Julius said no because he'd be dead instantly, making the girl laugh and call him hilarious while he just told her to be quiet. They finally hit the main market, and the hero was like, "Yo, is it always this crowded?" She told him the place gets way more crowded once the caravan rolls back in, and asked if he was vibing with it. But he just shrugged and said it seemed okay for a trading town, which the guy felt like a total tourist. But the clan was actually in Zweig, and she told him they were standing in Shambhala's massive main oasis, right in the heart. Julius asks if the mayor was actually a king, but she says no way, even though that'd be awesome. And when he asks if they're in a republic instead, she just shrugs and says kids don't need to know that stuff, which totally makes him curious. The girl asks Yulia how old he is, so he tells her he's 23 and asks for her age too. She says she thinks she's 18. And Yulia is totally shocked because he legit thought she was only 14. She's super confused by this nonsense because Julius was the one who proposed, making him a total jerk. He claims it was all a lie and he only needed her to come to the clothing store. The merchant spotted Julia and immediately asked if he was a guy and where he came from. Julius introduced himself as a merchant from the kingdom of Zweig who traveled from far away and knew all about this land of potions and labyrinths. Then he tossed the hero some fruit and called. Our hero had no clue what this fruit was, but Maple told him it's a momo meant to be eaten right away, and after one bite, he realized it was way softer and sweeter than an apple. The boy offers Clint some fruit and says it's totally fine if she doesn't want it, but then he tells her she's definitely going to take it anyway. The guy spotted a super weird cat off to the side, and she immediately asked what the heck it was. The hero called him a cat, but he totally lost it and yelled that he's not just a pet, he's a cat person. The kid reached out to pet him since he'd never heard a big cat talk, but the cat just flashed its claws and asked if he was looking for a fight. The guy said he was sorry and begged her not to be mad. To make it up to her, he decided to buy her a little something. He asked if they even used coins in Zweig. The guy noticed Maple wasn't touching her fruit and figured she hated it, but she told him that wasn't the case, so he said food is meant to be enjoyed and offered to trade. She thanked him, but said it wasn't even worth the trouble, leaving him totally confused by her weird reaction. He tries the shashlik and thinks it's absolutely fire. Glenn tells him the spot is legendary for its desert python, drenched in sweet and spicy sauce. Even though this little monster, Yule admitted he'd never seen cat people before and asked if the place was crowded, so Ken explained that it's 80% elves and 20% beast folk, with Shaylee's girl mentioned that around here, if a guy gives you the food he's literally about to eat, it means he's totally crushing on you. The guy totally freaked out and apologized for not knowing, but she just laughed and admitted she was lying, making him call her a total brat. They finally hit the right shop, and just like he expected, the inside looked totally wild. They run into a seamstress named Amina, who's down to help, so Clem tells her exactly who the new clothes are for. The elf took one look at the hero's gear, asked if he was on a suicide mission, and told him to lose the coat since they were inside. Amina starts hunting for clothes and says a guy needs a toga and a cloak, but Glenn just points out that elves don't actually wear pants. The guy yells, asking if she's for real, but she just grins and asks if he's doubting her. When he asks if she thinks mocking foreigners is a joke, she straight up tells him yes. Yuli finally tracked down the clothes and started trying on every single piece. The seamstress was actually hyped because she'd always wanted to fix up someone's gear, and she thanked him for coming. He tried on a mountain of clothes and asked if he was finally done. But Clan and the seamstress hated every single look, leaving him to sigh that everything looked the same, and he'd already tried it all. He spots a suit for 20 gold and asks Maple if he can pull it off, right as she calls out to him. Clen asks Amina about the outfit, and she thinks it's gorgeous, but he's floored when he realizes it costs 20 gold coins, especially since one big gold coin is worth 10 regular ones. A big silver equals 10 normal silvers. 1 silver gets you 10 big coppers, and there's even a noble banknote worth The mayor says the coins are worth about the same, and Clen tells everyone to relax because the mayor is footing the entire bill. Yuli wanted to keep things low-key, but Clem shut him down because the outfit showed everyone he was a total people person. He agreed, but he still thought those gold-threaded outfits were way too flashy, while she figured it was better than having people look down on them. He agreed, but since 20 gold coins is 2 whole months of pay, the lady let him try it on for free, though she screamed that if he got it dirty, he was definitely buying it. He changed his fit and asked how he looked, and the girls were totally shocked by how good he pulled it off, while he just felt super chill in it. Amina says 20 gold coins is a total steal because this fabric is woven with actual gold and rare dyes, making it a legit masterpiece. Amina sewed this for a super rich merchant, but he went totally broke and couldn't even afford to pick it up. Clen agrees he looks awesome, and when Yuli asks why she keeps saying it, she tells him he looks exactly like a prince from a fairy tale and swears she's being totally serious. Amina kept calling him her dear prince and saying he looked awesome, but he knew she was just acting sweet, so someone would finally buy him. Cleen was sure Julio was totally over his job at Zweig, and since he agreed, they were off to a great start. Being a royal wizard was cool, but he only got the gross jobs that nobody ever thanked him for. Maple asks the guy to ditch his coat, but he's not having it since he's starting a new life and wants to keep his pride. He asks if they need anything else, and these labyrinths are crawling with monsters, and the deeper you go, the tougher they get, and the better the loot they drop. Don't sleep on these dungeons because greed ruins everyone, and no treasure is worth dying for. As they kept walking, the hero asked where they were, and when Clen told him they were deep inside Shambhala, the boy immediately asked if it was even safe. She just smirks and says it's super dangerous, making him yell that she shouldn't be bringing guests to a place like this, but she tells him not to worry because the worst that could happen is a hit to the head, which he snaps back is exactly what he's afraid of. Clem says she's a regular here, so they'll be totally fine. And when he asks if she's for real, she explains that a real tour has to show the poor neighborhoods just. The boy figured the economy was totally tanking, and the girl backed him up, saying she knew for a fact that jobs were basically impossible to find. She said desperate thieves were doing whatever it took to survive, since there was no way to make cash, and the rich were just getting richer while everyone else struggled. The desert was running out of farmers fast, And while the boy thought it sounded like a total disaster, Maple said that conquering the maze would bring all the jobs back. She was totally sure this would save everyone, and he was 100% on board. He asks if there are any more dungeons nearby, so she tells him about a few in the desert, just a 30-minute camel ride away. And the kid offers to lead the way because As they drove, the guy realized he'd seriously underestimated how brutal this desert actually was. The sun is beating down and the dust won't stop, making this place way more brutal than he ever expected. They finally made it to the entrance of Shambhala's very first labyrinth, but then Glenn got pulled aside and spotted Tia standing right there. A traveler named Tio shows up, and Julius and Maple can't believe how fluffy he is. Tio asks if they want to hit the maze together, but Maple tells him they're just there for a quick tour. He checked out the blade, played it off like he was just looking around, and asked if he could keep the dagger for himself. Tia warned them that some seriously tough enemies were coming, but the girl said they were ready, and Julius just grabbed Clan and promised they'd handle it together. Glenn shouted in shock as he started dragging her toward the entrance, while Tio just waved, thinking they wouldn't make it and telling them she'd wait right there in case they had to run back. While exploring the maze, the hero said it looked just like the one in the Kingdom of Zvik, and Klin thought it was super weird that they could see everything clearly even though there was no sunlight. She glanced back, wondering if they were actually going to keep pushing forward. The boy says they're obviously going because they have to fight to pass, but the girl is stressed that her magic is useless since her only move is a basic ice ball. He reminds her she literally paralyzed him the second they met, and when she tries to deny it, he just pats her head and says she was so scary she made him shake, so she should be confident and stay behind him while he takes the lead. He warns them not to sleep on him because he spent 3 years in the army. He thinks this fight is going to be a total breeze and can't wait to tell her sister how much of a hallway opens up ahead, and as our hero peeks inside, he counts exactly 8 goblins waiting for him. Goblins are just weak monsters that swarm you in packs, so when the hero told her to handle the front while he cleared the back, she was totally caught off guard. Our hero vanishes into the portal and then suddenly drops out of it from way up high. He charged straight at the goblins while they were just sitting there, swinging his sword like crazy. One goblin spotted him and lunged, but the hero dodged, ducked into the portal, and started talking trash. He got right behind one of them and sliced its head clean off. Maple and the goblin just stood there, staring at each other in shock, but then she grabbed her staff and blasted him with an ice ball to finish him off. The guy was totally shocked by the insane drop rate and those massive crystals, but when the girl asked what he was holding, he couldn't believe she didn't know, which made her scream that she obviously did. She's totally blown away by how easy he makes fighting look, but he just shrugs and says that's how everyone does it back in Zvik. She doesn't believe him. Maple started furiously hitting him, but the boy just said this was his special power, and at least his magic was actually made for battle. He remembered his master getting totally pissed and warning him not to go wild with that magic, because if it backfired, he'd get stuck in the past or the future. The hero realized she was actually useful, but hated how she was getting under his skin, and even though Maple thought he'd lost it, he just said he felt awesome and started speeding up, leaving the girl totally floored that they were diving even deeper since she thought they were only doing this once. The hero was super hyped to see the desert boa and dared it to come closer so he could slice it. But after skewering the monster and asking what it was, Maple told him she told him to beat it, but he was having way too much fun and even showed off his tail to her. He's never seen these monsters before, so he's actually having a total blast. She snapped that it wasn't funny and he was acting like a total psycho. He definitely wasn't happy with that answer. She called him out for stealing dungeons people worked super hard on, She asked what Zavik and the dungeons were like, and he told her they were crawling with thieving rats, snow wolves, and a ton of people. He explained that the top floors were totally picked clean by other hunters, so they had to go deeper where the monsters were way stronger. And since almost everyone died instantly, he warned her that this dungeon is no joke, and she definitely wasn't laughing. Yuli asks if Shambhala has an adventurers guild, but since it doesn't exist yet, the girl explains that the army and border guards are the ones actually out there hunting the desert monsters. She said regular workers handle all the boring chores, so guilds are totally useless, and since Shambhala has almost no adventurers, you won't make any real money there anyway. He told her not to sweat it because he thinks Don is waiting for them. And with all these mazes everywhere, how could they possibly lose? They were standing right in front of these massive doors, and the kid had absolutely no clue what he was looking at. He spotted a huge stop sign right on the door, and while the girl screamed for them to turn back, he was just shocked they'd actually made it this far. Clinton told him they had to stop right there, and even though the kid was confused, she explained that a super strong boss was waiting ahead and they couldn't move until their potions were ready since they'd already taken a beating. He just grinned about how much work he had and told them they should go take a quick look. The girl was totally shocked and asked him what he even needed it for. She tried to stop him, panicking because her sister would totally flip out if she found out. He told her to chill since Radha wouldn't have a clue unless they actually told her themselves. Plend couldn't really argue with her and told the kid to wait, but the boy was dying to see what was inside and finally managed to swing the door open. Inside was a chimera, this crazy monster with a lion and goat head, eagle wings, and a snake for a tail. The monster let out a mean growl and charged straight at them. The guy was actually hyped since this was the big moment he'd been waiting for. The girl behind him was shaking, crying. The kid ducks the attack and screams that the massive boss is coming from above, making Clint freak out and tell Yulia they're totally doomed. But the boy just turns around and yells that he's already weakened the monster, so she needs to strike now. The monster swings again, but Yuli slips past the attack and ends up right by its side. That massive snake tail lunged straight for him, but he just popped open a portal. He leaps to the other side and starts chanting his spell. He squared up against the boss and let a fireball fly, but he was totally shocked when it didn't do a single thing. The guy yelled for his crew while she hit the monster with a paralyzing poison, instantly tanking its magic resistance, strength, and speed. The kid standing off to the side jumped right into the fight too. Out of nowhere, a monster's face popped out of the smoke, and Julius just grinned. A massive hit smashed right through the floor, and as the girl screamed his name in a panic, he just yelled back that he was totally fine, since he flew out of the way just in time. He drops right onto the chimera's lion head, jams his sword in, and sets off a massive explosion. The monster's head starts glowing from the inside, and then that light just spreads through its whole body. The monster finally crashed to the ground, and as our hero landed and let out a huge breath, he admitted he was totally wiped out, while the girl just stood there, blown away by his insane power. He stared at his shattered blade and muttered about how tough that monster was, but the girl just tackled him with a huge hug and cheered that he actually pulled it off. She was totally blown away that he actually beat the boss and called him a beast, making him blush as he bragged that it was easy for an elite mage like him. Our hero was aching all over and told the girl they should just head home, but right as she agreed, they spotted a massive treasure chest dropping from the second-floor boss. They peeked inside and were totally blown away, having absolutely no clue what they were even looking at. As they stare at this insane palace, the girl mentions the old man used the city's money to build it and clearly knows what he's doing, while the boy is just totally blown away by how epic it looks. She explains that an old temple used to be right here before they filled it with flowers, and the hero is totally vibing with the place, while a squirrel chills on her hand, and someone inside gives them a super warm welcome. This gorgeous elf in a black dress starts chewing them out for taking forever, while the boy just awkwardly mumbles that it's already nighttime. The girl he's with teases him for staring, but he totally denies it. He's trying to make excuses for himself, while the elf in the black dress gets all shy and asks if she looks good in it. Uli gives her props for the great work, leaving everyone else totally lost, while the guy demands a tour of the workshop and the elf in black steps up to help him out. They head deeper into the palace, where the boy spots a pedestal and guesses they were trying to rebuild a potion factory, and the elf totally agrees, telling him she wants to hear his full theory later. The elf girl is super hyped, saying she totally knew they picked the right guy. He gets all shy and says anyone could have done it, but he promises not to let them down. Meanwhile, he takes a seat and says it's tough to top the original, but this work is still incredible, making the elf ask him again with a massive smile. Yuli asks for his gear. She promises to get it to him ASAP, and since the Chimera and the first enemy are already toast, the team is finally ready to raid the maze. The elf in black is totally shocked, but her sister just crosses her arms and acts all tough by saying no, even though the guy behind her points out she's actually been super nervous this whole... The girl next to Yuli shows off the loot the Chimera dropped: a golden topaz, a clear horned stone, and dark obsidian, while another elf stares at them, thinking this specific combo is way too weird to be a coincidence. Julius acts all chill while asking how the people there are built, and the girl in the dress is totally caught off guard. She brings him into the room, but he can tell she's totally on edge and asks why she's so nervous about his question. Another elf warns him that this is going to hit him too, but he just tells her to shut it. She shows him around the living and dining rooms, and he's actually really vibing with the place. He spots all their gear and asks why they even brought it, but the elf girl says they didn't have a choice, while another one pipes up to claim the plush bunny is hers. The elf in the dress shyly admits he's the one who picked them. Another one jokes he'll get used to being married, and our guy suddenly realizes he totally forgot about this. He asks what's upstairs, and when they tell him it's just the common room, he gets a really bad feeling about the whole situation. He sprints up the stairs, bursts into the room, and asks what the heck it is. The room is massive, with a giant fancy bed, and while the elves stand there acting all shy, he straight up says the whole place looks like a total brothel. Julius confronts the elf, asking if she's following the chief's orders or just acting on her own, but she swears she has nothing to do with it. They're still convinced the old man is the one calling the shots, and the girl keeps insisting they need to get this guy under control. He asks why she'd say that, and her sister just tells him she smells really good. She spots the girl in the black dress looking all sparkly and smelling amazing, making her feel totally awkward as she tries to explain herself. She remembers that dark-haired elf who claimed she could make Julius fall head over heels for her. The other elves are rushing over to back her up and give her some pointers. Uli finally realized the secretary was the one causing all the drama. Another elf noticed the girl actually looked pretty cool when she was angry. That guy told her to just go home because he didn't. Another elf mentions that Shambhala law says married couples have to sleep together, but the heroes are totally not down for that. He remembers his talk with the old man and tells the girls he was just messing with him, so Yulia says they should just head home, since the guy definitely isn't going anywhere. They tell him straight up that the mayor's word is law, and there's no way they're turning back now. One girl is trying to talk him into it, while the other is totally shocked by her wild ideas, but the guy isn't budging at all. She starts grilling him with some super awkward questions, but he's doing his best to deny everything. The elf girl says Julius has done so much for Shambhala that he deserves a major reward, and while another person is totally on board, the boy just doesn't get it at all. They close in from both sides. One says they're changing the kid's life and have to take responsibility, while the other just nods and signals for the attack. They finally end up on the bed, and the girl lands right on top of Julia. Right when things are getting super weird, the mayor walks in and says they've got a massive feast ready for the kid. The whole squad screams out in total shock. The old guy clears his throat and says he's sorry. He walks up to an elf named Klin and tells her she's in charge, but he makes a super awkward assumption that makes the boy and girl totally lose it, kicking off their chaotic new life in Shambhala. Lightning is crashing all over the kingdom of Zweig, while a bald dude named Heinrich sits in his office, completely losing it over some insane news he just got. Even though the king put him in charge of the elixir factory and he's one of the most powerful nobles in Zweig, he knows there's no way he can hit next month's goal. Just thinking about this makes him absolutely lose it. Julius Henry seriously dragged me into a massive mess. He found out 2 spheres were swiped, the factory lines were shut down, and the guy even grabbed secret files, which Heinrich sees as a total backstab. He knew he couldn't tell a soul, because as the manager, he'd be the one taking all the blame. He knows he can't let the king find out, so he slams his fist on the table in a total rage, cursing Julia's name. Just then, the butler brings a letter into the office, and Henry acts like everything is totally normal, while the servant says it's an official message from the royal palace. The letters demanded they double their work, and the guy was totally shook, panicking that they couldn't go that fast without everything falling apart. Henry can't believe they're upping the order right now, but the servant explains the war next door means they need way more supplies, making Henry so mad he chucks a jug right against the wall. The steward thinks they should just come clean, but the guy knows that's a total disaster, so he orders a 30% boost to the potion and tells them to crank up production to push the 4 eyes to the absolute max. The servant reports that the top-tier alchemists are whining, but Heinrich snaps back that since Julius did all this work alone, they should be able to handle it too. The steward thinks this plan is a total disaster, but the guy screams at him to stop questioning his bosses. Henrik pours a drink, feeling totally confident that people will keep buying their potions because as long as there are dungeons and wars, no one else can mass-produce them like they do. Yuli runs into a long-haired guy in a white jumpsuit named Marius who's puffing on a cigarette, and when Yuli asks if the hero is heading back to war, Marius is totally shocked to see him. Longhair says if he quits being a wizard, it's game over, but Smile says he's totally sick of it, and Marius points him out, asking what he's even turned into. Yuli is super hyped to announce that he's finally become an alchemist. The kid snaps his eyes open and realizes it was all just a dream, right as the sun starts peeking over the horizon. Yuli steps out onto the balcony to stare at the ocean, stretching his arms and realizing he definitely drank way too much last night. He thinks back to the mayor constantly refilling his glass and wonders why old people push drinking on kids so much, especially since he's just dying for a nap. He thinks back to his master Marius and just hopes the rest of the guys are doing all right. Right then, he spots one of the elf sisters stepping into the water, totally naked. She doesn't even notice he's there, and the poor guy is totally dying of embarrassment. Julius is blushing so hard that even his ears are turning bright red. She's totally confused about why she's standing there naked, while the elf just keeps heading deeper into the water. The kid creeps closer and ducks behind a bush. He's watching her from his hiding spot, face turning bright red as he tries to convince himself it's not his fault, since she's the one who wanted to swim here. The elf mutters to herself that the water in Zweig was way too freezing, but this spot is actually perfect. He stops for a second, realizing that spying on people is actually pretty messed up. Out of nowhere, Maple pops up right next to him and asks if he loves her, which totally freaks him out since he has no clue how long she's been there, but she just says she's been watching since he first hid, and now he's terrified because the absolute worst sister just found him. She says she totally gets exactly how Julius is feeling. The girl starts hyping up her sister's looks, but the boy teases her for sounding like a stiff mare. Then the elf asks if she's the prettiest girl in the world, leaving the boy totally speechless, while the rest of the clan just watches and knows exactly what's going on. She wonders if her sister will be happy when she finds out, but Julius literally drops to his knees and begs her not to say a word. Maple's hyped for the info, but the dude says he's still going to be totally weirded out, making her crack up until he finally waves her off. The elf asks him one more time if her sister was pretty, and the hero finally stops blushing long enough to say she looked like a literal goddess. The second he answered, Maple's eyes lit up, and she shouted that he got it perfectly right. The elf spills her sister's daily bath schedule and gets way too hyped up about her, making the guy seriously wonder if she's a total weirdo. Maple thinks they should give it one more look just to be sure. Julia says he's done with that, but she still calls him a total snooze fest. Julius and two sisters are hauling a giant barrel to fill up the pool, and he's being totally shy while sneaking a look at the girl helping him out. She wipes her forehead and catches him staring, so the elf asks what's up, but the boy, still totally beat from their morning adventure, just looks away and says he's fine. Yuli tries to get her head in the game and focus, but Clint tells her that her sister is way too gorgeous for her to even think straight, so he just brushes her off while he stares at the pool and knows he's finally ready, double-checking his ingredients for the healing potion: oasis water, a goblin's magic stone, herbs, aloe, and date palm seeds. The girls did exactly what they were told and dropped every single magic stone right into the pool. He pumps magic into the water with his staff until it starts bubbling. Clean is totally blown away by how soft it feels, and another elf says she'd love to hop in for a bath if she wasn't already clean. He thinks back to earlier that morning and awkwardly tells them they're totally distracting him, so they quickly apologize. The girls went totally silent until the boy turned around and told them the basic potion was finally ready. The elf asks what the move is, and the hero explains they need to add one more ingredient, even though he's never done this alchemist stuff before. She gets worried and asks if it's... Julius is totally sure that if those alchemists can pull it off, he can definitely do it too. He thinks the healing potion is just herbs and aloe, but he swaps the apples for dates to make it taste way better as they toss in the rest of the ingredients. The girls think it looks and smells amazing, so Julius tells them to just eat the whole thing and mix it with magic. Maple wishes him luck and tells him not to stress, since he was easily the most skilled guy at the factory. He starts stirring the potion, but the staff is way thicker than he expected, and as he struggles to move it, he apologizes to the girls for totally messing up. The girls check in to see if he's doing okay and mention how good it smells, so he tells them the food is almost ready. They had a massive mountain of candy, making the elves' jaws drop, while the guy just didn't buy it. They're totally hyped because it feels like a straight-up fairy tale. So the boy grabs a piece of candy to check it out, but while he's wondering why it's so screw, Yule warns her she might get sick, but she takes a bite anyway and says it's super soft and has a perfect sweet-sour kick. Another girl isn't sure if the candy is actually that good, so the guy stops her from eating it, since he can't be 100% sure it's safe. The elf totally ignores him and takes a bite, loving every second of it, while Maple tells Yulia she's a straight-up genius for making such a tasty treat. He asks if it's actually that good, She tells him to just try it, but he says no way because he has to inspect it first. The elves are actually starting to forgive everyone, but our guy thinks they've totally lost their minds. Suddenly, they hear a noise and the mayor bursts in, shouting about a huge emergency and asking if they have any potions. His servant is hauling a badly hurt cat on his back, and the heroes freak out when they realize it's actually Tia. The cat is just chilling in a bag with its eyes shut. And man, our hero's cursed technique is looking absolutely cooked. They lay her on the couch and are totally shocked by how badly she got wrecked by that level 5 ogre in the dungeon. The other cats are sobbing and begging Julius to save her because they heard his potion is the absolute best for healing monster wounds. The guy's losing hope because his injury looks way too bad for a potion to fix, but the elf rushes over and tells him they've got to give it a shot. She hits up Kling and heads to the pool with some candy, but when Julia gets asked what they are, he explains it's just a healing potion that totally flopped. Maple brings out a candy, and the other elf gives the green light, saying it made them both feel way stronger. But the guy is still totally sketched out about giving it to the patient. The elf snaps back, shouting that he'll never know for sure unless he actually gives it a shot. Maple pops a candy in his mouth while the guy just stares in confusion, but the girl explains that desert girls are just built different. Then she gives the cat a treat, and it instantly transforms into a massive. Tia snaps her eyes open and sits up on the couch, totally healed and shocked, while everyone else is just as blown away. Everyone's hyped and calling it a total miracle. But the guy holding the candy realizes the healing is actually way too strong, and even better than usual. The second the mayor brought up the elixir, the boy was totally locked in. The old man explains it's a legendary potion from ancient scrolls that can heal any wound and give you a massive energy boost. But the mayor thinks it's just a myth, and the girls are. The old man promises that with his help, they can finally resist Zvike's potions, so they need to start a guild ASAP, even though the elves warn that their massive workload is only going to get crazier. Julius is about to speak, but the mayor cuts him off and asks him to start making that elixir in huge batches. The old man tells him he has to do it no matter what, but the kid gets dead serious and says, absolutely not. Every single eye is locked onto him right now. Yuli holds up the candy and tells the mayor it's a total disaster that he's just got to admit. This old man is absolutely massive, and he's totally down for it. The boy is just chilling at the table, reading his books with Maple when another elf walks over carrying a plate of fruit. He's pretty sure he tried brewing those elixirs over and over after that, but every single one was a total fail. Yuli has absolutely no idea why this is even happening. He realized he totally messed up the basics of alchemy, so he's going to hit his wife's library to relearn everything, even though actually pulling it off will be a massive challenge. Maple asks why he even needs that potion when candy works just as well, and another elf totally backs her up. He says that if they use the candy and Shambhala, everything will be totally fine, and the travelers will get a massive power boost. He says you can't buy these because they're way too powerful and can heal a dying person in a heartbeat. The kid's wondering about the price tag, and when the clan pressuring him asks again, he just tells them they won't make a single cent. Another elf points out that's over 100 large gold coins, but the guy just tosses a maple candy and says it's way too expensive for adventurers to actually afford. Glenn asks if they can just make it like the potions, but the guy says that'd be way too cheap and suggests selling the elixir to other countries instead. Julius thinks the elixir is way too dangerous because it can literally build an army that never dies. The kid warns that this legendary elixir won't just wipe out Shambhala, it'll destroy the entire world, and the elf knows he's dead serious. Yuli figures they need a potion that's just a bit better than Swike's, and enough of it to start a massive war in the market. He figures they can't fix anything right now, and thinks it'd be awesome if they could just share the elixir's power. The elf cheers him on for making legendary candy and calls him the best, while Yuli just smirks and says it's because he's elite. Glenn asks if Yuli can actually fix this mess, and Yuli just tells him he's already on it. The elf heads off to help the mayor, but Maple is super worried the guy is going to pass out from working way too hard. He plays it off like it's no big deal and says he's just super bored, so the girls buy it and start to head out. But then one of them suddenly walks right up to him. Maple plants a quick kiss on the boy's cheek and tells him he had better stay out of trouble. He screams after her in a total rage as she bolts, realizing they're completely stuck without those herbs. He's back to wondering if he should actually share the elixir's insane power. The kid reaches out and grabs a slice of orange from the fruit plate. The pieces snap together just like an accordion, and he can't stop obsessing over it. These two cats actually come up to thank Yulia for saving their sister. He asks how she's doing, and they say she's just resting. But then a cat mentions she's whispering the name Julia with a super weird smile, giving our hero a major bad vibe. Yuli's packing his gear for the trip and asks if anyone's hurt, so he can test his potions, but the crew says they've already found tons in the dungeon and thanks him for the offer. Julius hands him a potion for the injured guy and a lever for himself. But right then, someone walks up and demands to know what he's even doing there. Meet Mama, this massive Tiger Man adventurer who the cats say is the second strongest guy in the whole dungeon. The cats call him out for being so rude, since Julius literally saved their sister. But Mama just shrugs and acts like he has no idea who that even is. Tiger mocks his sister for being too weak for the dungeon and screams that it's finally his time to shine. The cat tries to talk him out of it, but he shoves her away, yelling that he hates everyone, and just seeing that guy makes him want to end him, while Yulia grins and the kid starts messing with the tiger, and it suddenly snaps, lunging right at him with a massive roar. Julius finally tracks down the mayor, who's in his office with two sisters and a dark-haired elf, and the mayor immediately asks him what went down. He sets the potion down on the office table, while the old man just stares at it, looking totally clueless. The whole office couldn't take their eyes off the bottle as the guy casually apologized for the wait, claiming it was the exact Shambhala elixir they'd been looking for. The elf is dying to know how he did it, so Julius explains it's just the flip side of his first idea, holding up the candy and telling her that if your plan fails, you just gotta use what you've already made. He says the idea hit him right after she cut him some fruit, so he decided to split the candy and change how he said it. Yulia explains that potions are just concentrates mixed with water, so he figures he can do the same with candy, and the girls think it's a genius move. He explains that just one candy can make 100 bottles of potion, leaving everyone totally shocked as the mayor grabs the vial, and the hero announces they've finally figured out how to mass-produce it. He thinks back to that crazy tiger fight and sarcastically jokes that since those test subjects were so helpful, they're 100% sure the potion actually works. He, the mayor, Sheikans, and Julius start plotting to flip the whole world upside down, and the old man is totally down for it. The girls look over their deal as Maple declares this the start of Shambhala, and her sister is totally on board. Glenn heads into a creepy, abandoned part of the city, walks into a rundown house, and tells an old guy with a bandaged eye that she's got a job for him. He recognizes her and calls out Mabel, and she says it's been way too long since they last saw each other, Rashid. The guy agrees it's been way too long, while she remembers that just a little while ago, these slums were her home. She's thinking back on all the messed up things she's done, and even though Rashid says she hasn't changed one bit, she just shrugs it off like it's nothing. She flexes that she's already got a husband, and he's totally blown away by the news. He tries to argue that she's still just a kid, but the elf shuts him down and says she's already 18. Rashid is totally stunned, so she sits down and asks him if she finally looks like a grown-up. He nods along and says she's right, but in his head, he knows it's the total opposite. She tells him to become an adventurer because now that the dungeon is open, it's time to get rich, and it pays way better than doing shady stuff. He's totally doubting himself, but when he asks if he can handle it, Glenn tells him he's got this and promises to teach him everything. This guy is already thinking about what a total drag this whole situation is. The girl warns their toast if they don't act. The guy is totally over it, and the elf reminds them that adventurers actually get some pretty cool perks. He takes the deal and asks if he can meet others just like him, and she's totally down for it. Glenn says the kids help out whenever they can, and she remembers how her sister gave her a future that most slum kids could only dream of. She just wants to bring them to life, and while the man is totally down, the elf says that's exactly why she likes Rashid, even though he's super annoyed by the whole idea. Rashid notices she's totally different now and thinks back to when she first showed up right after Lake Mac was drained. He says she's finally grown up because of that guy, but she's not so sure, and he just chuckles at her being so confused. But she's totally fired up and promises she'll do literally anything for Yulia. Rashid calls her out for catching feelings, but she claims she's just messing with him, and honestly, he's not impressed at all. He takes a swig from his bottle and asks her what Yuli is up to right now. She's sure he's staring at her sister again, so his actual answer catches her totally off guard while Rashid starts choking on his drink. The guy yells at her and sends her packing, but she's honestly just super proud of herself. Yuli stands out on his balcony and finally admits to himself that he's been low-key watching Raj again. He knows he shouldn't be doing this, but he's totally blown away by how gorgeous she looks. He thinks back to his teacher and tells him in his head that Shambhala is a seriously awesome place. Raja creeps up behind him with a bag of groceries and calls out, making him jump back in total terror. She asks what went down, and he says it's all good, but he can tell something is totally off with her even though she denies it. He notices her fingers are totally covered in bandages, so he grabs her hand and asks her what happened. She tells him she's totally fine, but he refuses to leave until she drinks the potion, even while the elf tells him to quit being so pushy. They're getting way too close for comfort, and things are starting to feel super awkward. Just then, Glenn and the mayor peek inside with creepy fake smiles that totally freak out the heroes, while Glenn blabs about a close call and the kids demand to know what they're even doing there. Glenn calls him out for flirting with her sister, but the mayor says that's just normal for a married couple. The guy denies everything, and even though Raza confirms they're together, Yuli tells her to stop making things so messy. He asks the mayor what he wants, but the mayor just says there's a tiny problem, so he asks again to find out what's really going on. The old man tells him to show up at the council meeting later that day, catching the boy totally off guard while the girls are left scratching their heads. As they walk down the long hallway to the meeting, the old man tells them he's not actually a king. He's just the mayor who runs the city. They walk into the hall as he explains the council is busy deciding how to run the country, while two elves, one with white hair and glasses, and another with a dark mustache, keep a close eye on him. Hundreds of elves are staring down from the stands while the sisters chill on a bench, and even though Julius looks totally confident, he's still stressing over all the drama with those rival groups. The mayor introduces him as a pro-potion master, but our guy totally thinks the old man is just telling him to shut up. Then this elf with a mustache says his people have heard all about him and introduces himself as General Hassam. This white-haired elf, named Bardiel, the head of the merchant guild, starts talking down to the boy with a super suspicious look, and Yulia is totally losing it over how rude. The elf kicks things off, saying everyone is on board with Mayor Lebrat's project, but there's one specific part they really don't like. He pointed right at Yulia and yelled that the real issue was him being her husband, leaving the other guy totally clueless. Bardiel calls the kid a total fraud, accusing him of stealing tech to sell it and making potions just to look famous, saying no merchant would ever trust a guy like that. Raja is screaming that they just swiped the tech and this guy is innocent. But Bardiel warns that the Zweig crew isn't stupid and could have totally planned this whole mess. The crowd starts backing the elf, shouting that this guy wants to enslave their girls and wondering why the mayor is ignoring it, while Yulia just stays completely silent. White-Herod acts like brewing potions is a piece of cake for the alchemist, but he's totally clueless, and when Maple tries to speak up about the elixir, her sister stops her right there. The elf tried to talk to them, but the sister stayed quiet to keep the potion a secret, so nobody would think Julius stole the recipe just to look like a hero. Hassam jumps in and tells the elf that the kid actually betrayed his own home just to save their land and heal all those people. The whole crowd starts backing him up because they finally trust Yuli, and the mayor even says the country literally can't survive without him. Bardiel demands proof that these boys are actually legit, so the old man asks what they have to do to convince him. This white-haired elf, with a creepy split smile, says he can totally rebuild Lake Map. Everyone starts nodding along with him, and the meeting finally wraps up. Julius finally flops onto the mayor's couch with a huge sigh, and after everyone thanks him for his awesome work, he tells the dark-haired elf that this place is way better than Zui. He felt totally helpless, like a fish on a cutting board, but he just brushed off Clen's jokes while the other guy smirked, hyped that he'd finally get to see the inside of Shambhala. Yuli thinks there's a clear pattern to the war between the government and Bardiel's military traders. But since trade is everything in this country, Bardiel is way too powerful to ignore. The guy is just glad they're actually down for the herb trade, but Rajas is getting super annoyed and asks if she's mad, and she straight up tells him she is. She screams that they're forcing him to stay, and that calling him an idiot and a non-believer was way out of line. Clinton Yuli realizes she's absolutely terrifying when she's angry. The elf snaps that she's not just going to stay quiet while her husband gets insulted. Both the guy and the girl. The kid asks about Lake Mac, and the old man explains it's a lake east of Shambhala that completely dried up in just one single night. Rasha admits they still have no idea why this is happening, and Clen adds that the mystery forced everyone, including her, to move out to the edge of town. The mayor pats her head and says he's the one who adopted them, but the boy snaps that a dead lake can't be brought back to life, even if he isn't some high-class elite. Maple turns to him, looking like she's totally begging for help. She's begging him to give Lake Mac back, telling him he can have literally anything he wants in exchange. Bardiel thinks the lake just vanished overnight, the whole city was wiped out, and the elves are so freaked out by the curse that nobody dares to go near the place anymore. Once he's done eating, he starts thinking about how the kid actually agreed to the reconstruction. The elf smirks, thinking he should have just walked away because this guy is way too dense to get sarcasm, and everyone in Zwick already knows he's a total joke. Ardiel knows this guy's secret. He's a royal mage who ran from the war, got locked in a factory, and then fled the country for good. The elf takes a sip of wine, wondering how Julius is even supposed to help them out. He calls the mayor Sham Shiel and starts hyping up how good the wine is. The old man realizes this kid has a spark they're all missing, but Bardiel just scoffs, asking what a guy who always runs away could even do. The elf stands up, says the talk is over, thanks the mayor for the breakfast, and just walks out. This old guy actually thinks Julius has only been around for a couple of days. He starts counting up his wins, like crushing dungeons, making tons of potions, and even crafting an insane elixir. The mayor thinks Bardiel seriously needs to wake up and face the real world. Julius and his wives were already chilling by the lake, but this guy is acting super confident that he's gonna fail, complaining that the whole vibe of the place is just off, while Rajas mentions the boy asks what the big shots think about the lake, but the elf says even after tons of research, nobody has a straight answer. Yulia thinks the water moving underground is the problem. Raja points out that a whole lake doesn't just vanish in one night, and the guy snaps that if they knew why this was happening, they would have fixed it themselves already. The kid asks to report every single thing he saw, and Clint turns his focus back to Julius. She thanks him for fixing the lake, but he gets all shy and says he hasn't even done anything yet. She cracks a totally inappropriate joke, so he tells her to get back to work and starts yanking on her ears. He keeps moving forward, but then it hits him. He has no clue what he's actually gonna ask her. Back when he was still in the mayor's office, he straight up told everyone he wasn't a god. This guy isn't sure he'll ever make it back to the lake. The clan asks if he still remembers those thickets. She says it's only gotten way worse since that lake disaster. The sisters say if the lake wakes up, they can finally go home safely, and the mayor wants him to imagine he's the one who can actually bring that dead oasis back to life. The old man says he's about to blow up, with everyone calling him a hero and putting his face on merch, while the clan says he's going straight to the top. He tells them straight up that he can't bring the lakes back, just as the Raja starts creeping up behind him. She wraps her arms around his neck from behind and begs him to give it a shot, because this is a huge deal for both of them. Maple is totally trying to work her charm to make him fall for her. He snaps at her, demanding to know what she thinks she's doing right in front of her own father. The mayor asks if he should head out, but this kind of anger usually just gets way more intense. He's yelling at the top of his lungs that he finally gets it. Everyone flashes a sweet smile and asks him the same thing again. He nervously mumbles that he's in deep trouble if he doesn't step up and handle this. He's also totally over Bardiel, constantly trying to mess with his life. He decided that even if he loses, he's got to show them he's being 100% real. Julius remembers saying those words, but stuck in the middle of a wasteland, the scorching heat finally takes him out. He's lugging this maple tree girl on his shoulders, and they're both sweating buckets in the crazy heat. Raja tells the crew to chill until sunset, and while everyone's down, Clint starts yanking on the hero's cheek because she's totally ticked off, making him beg her to stop. He pinches her on the leg, and she falls right off him with a loud squeal. The elf is stuck crawling on the ground, and while Yulia calls it a punishment, Radha is right there hyping them up to keep going. Maple stops everyone because she senses something under the ground, but the guy thinks she's being pervy and tries to hold her back. The girl says she feels something tiny under her, and the boy stares at her, totally shocked. He sits down right next to her, plants his hand on the ground, and shuts his eyes. Julia senses a tiny trace of magic and asks Radha how deep it goes, but she admits she's totally clueless about the small details. Maple teases his sister for being a total beauty, but she just shuts him down and says she's only got room for her sword. The boy slams his hands on the ground, telling everyone to stop fighting and get close because he's about to break through, while Raja asks him what he's even talking about. He fires off an explosion spell, and the ground right under his hands cracks and shatters into massive dry chunks. Huge chunks of rock go flying everywhere, scattering way off into the distance. The ground starts falling apart right under their feet, and they all start screaming. Everyone goes flying and slams into the water with a massive splash. They float down the river on their backs, totally stoked that they're still alive, and finally found some water. They finally scramble back up, and Raja is totally fuming, demanding to know what kind of crazy magic that was, while the boy just awkwardly admits the ground was way weaker than he expected. They get closer to the massive gate, seeing giant vines wrapped all over it, and the entrance carved right into the stone wall. They step into the doorway, wring out their soaking wet clothes, and stare right at the shut door. The boy tells them they did a great job, so Clem starts begging for credit since she was the first to spot the weirdness, but Raja says he's totally done giving her compliments. The elf is totally shocked because she had no clue this hidden hole even existed, and Yulia thinks it's the exact reason all the water dried up. The sisters are totally down, and the hero says there's only one thing left to do. He just smirks and says they've got to raid the dungeon, leaving the elves totally freaking out. Radha tries to stop him because she thinks it's way too dangerous, reminding him that he's just an alchemist. He says it's all for the mission, but complains that just reporting is super lame. So she grabs his shoulders and tells him they should just wait for the research team. The girl begs her sister for backup, but Clem knows it's a lost cause, so he rips himself away from Raja and yells for everyone to follow him. She asks what that was, so he explains it was just a short teleport and tells her not to worry since someone is already in the dungeon. A pack of sahagans, these super smart fish monsters with weapons, and some tree-like creatures called ants that grab and eat people, just showed up in the dungeon. 2 archers, Sagajan, and 3 ants blocked their path as those fish monsters started raining arrows down on our heroes. Yuli warps right behind the Sagagons and drops down on them, leaving the monsters totally clueless about what just happened. He swings both daggers in one quick motion, taking the heads clean off those archer monsters. Maple grabs the staff and absolutely tanks the enemy's speed and defense. Raja zooms past her and jabs an ant, blasting a huge hole right into the tree trunk. Maple hurls a massive fireball straight at the enemies. Julius slices through another ant, making Rajas think he's totally lost it. So she asks why an alchemist is leading the charge, but he just says he's way faster this way. Even after the fight, Raja admits she's never seen magic like that, while Maple loots crystals and wonders if her powers are why her people hated her. And the guy realizes he's actually... Raja says he's way too slow. Clint thinks he's just too normal. And the guy is absolutely fuming that his own kidnappers are roasting him like this. After all the whining, they kept searching and ducked behind some rocks to spy on the other Sahagans. He told his sisters he'd flank from the other side while they charged, and they were already sprinting into the fight before he could even finish. As the elves stormed into the fight, Julius realized these two were easily some of the best warriors in the whole country. Raja slices through another Sahagan's neck, totally sure his sister is strong enough to keep up with his every move. Yuli thinks they're the most beautiful crew ever, real-deal adventurers, and that they're about to have a total blast. Clint says he really misses Sagagan and is totally done with fried fish for now. So when some guy asks where he's from, the elf just tells him he came straight out of the dungeon. He notices the dungeon used to be made of wood, and this monster doesn't fit at all, so Roger thinks Lake Mac is changing the place. And Aaron agrees it's totally possible. They reach another gate, and the guy is freaking out that the boss is right behind it, but the girls are totally against them all going in together. Maple is shaking and swears she's gonna whip him after the battle, but the boy just asks her to go easy on him while the sisters think he's getting off way too light. They head inside and find a hermit crab with a rock-hard shell that shoots out a super dangerous blast of water. Yuli knows this beast and realizes it's going to be a total nightmare to fight with its unbreakable shell and gross smell, and right then, the monster lunges. They're ducking behind a boulder to dodge the water blast. Raja shouts they need to weaken it, so Maple drops her shield just as the monster gears up for another hit. Raja swung a massive chop right at the monster's claw, but that armor didn't even get a scratch. Raja screams that he can't take it anymore, but then a guy suddenly appears next to the monster and slams his hands onto the ground, shouting that if attacking from above doesn't work, he'll just hit it from below. The monster lifts its massive claw right over Yulia while the girls scream his name in total panic. He summons a sharp earth spike right under the monster's stomach, stabbing it all the way through. Julius looks down at the dead beast and shouts that they finally won. Raja says the whole thing was way too wild, but the guy right in front of her tells her she's just stressing out for no reason. The whole clan is hyped about their victory, and the hero totally agrees. But then the elf spots a treasure chest, making Raja wonder what's actually inside. He spots two super rare chests, one big and one small, but Maple warns him the big one is for greedy people, and he should definitely open the small one instead. Yulia explains that both lids can actually open and starts with the big one, leaving Clen totally shocked by his own mistake and what's hidden inside. He pulls out a spool of silk to check it out, and while the sisters stare in total shock, he admits he's never heard of an artifact being used as a labyrinth trap before. Raja grabs the fabric and is shocked that something this awesome isn't a rare jewel, while his people start wondering if this is all just destiny. The guy tells them to just take the fabric if they want it, and the girls are totally hyped. Yuli lets out a big sigh, admitting he'll never understand how girls think. He cracks open the small chest and finds a weird round object sitting on a pile of gold, but he has absolutely no clue what it is. Sierra thinks the creature looks just like a doll, while Julia says it's small and weird, but honestly super cute. The monster asks where it is, and the heroes are totally shocked that it can actually talk. They're hanging out in Chambord when Sierra introduces herself, but she calls Julia John, making him totally snap, even though the robot still scans him in. The robot lists their names as Maple, Sierra, and John, making Julius totally lose his cool and scream that he's not John, while the girl just cracks up. Sierra tries to give the bot a new name, but it says it can't, and she's so moved by that, she makes it her official assistant on the spot. This creature claims he's a robot, built to help the creator stay organized, and he tells the group they can ask him absolutely anything. Julius is freaking out about Lake McCloud vanishing. Sierra's confused how a robot even knows about it, but then he just tells them to look over there. They spot water gushing out of a massive crack, and the robot explains that a cave formed under the lake and totally blocked the water flow. The girls are super hyped and ask if the oasis will finally wake up once they plug all the leaks, and the robot tells them that's exactly what'll happen. Now they gotta figure out how to plug those holes, and some think ice magic is gonna make it a total breeze. Sierra begs Julia to fix things, and when he asks why him, the girls say it's because he's a total elitist lunatic, leaving him super confused but low-key flattered. Julia's dead serious that this can actually work, and while he's hyped to try, the girls are totally against him leaving. He says the Royal Library in Zweig is packed with books on this, so he's just gonna go and borrow them all. Maple breaks down in tears and screams, no, shouting that they're already a family and asking if they actually trust him. Smiling, the guy says he knows they won't listen, but his mind is made up, and he's sure this is the right move. Sierra warns him that if he doesn't come back, they're coming to find him because they love their life together, but he tells her not to stress and promises he'll be home soon. Both girls wish him luck and smile, telling him they'll be waiting for him back at the house. Yuli steps into the portal, feeling like his heart is already waiting for him in Shambhala. Over in the kingdom of Zweig, a shady dude is watching Julius arrive and smirking because he knows things are about to get crazy. Yuli realizes they're traveling everywhere on foot, and it's going to take him at least half a day just to get back to his bike. He's wondering if this world actually has an end, but he realizes the mages are still totally clueless about it. He remembers his teacher's rules. Stay in the light, don't hang around here, and whatever you do, Don't follow anyone else. Julius realized he was totally clueless about dimensional magic, knowing only the few things his master had actually shown him. He heads for the exit, but he can't stop wondering what's going down in Zweig right now. An old nun greets him, and he gives her a huge grin, calling her the director. The director lets out a huge sigh of relief and says he's totally fine, while Ulye apologizes for the drama and hands her a fat bag of cash. She sadly admits he might have betrayed the whole country, but then she quickly adds that honestly, she's just glad he's still alive. He asks what those castle guys were after, and the director tells him they just searched the shelter and took off. She mentioned she was promised a reward for him, and when Julius teased her for being greedy, she told him to knock it off like he was a little kid. Murray shows up and wonders why Yuli is still hanging around after causing him nothing but a massive headache. Marius is totally fed up because the rich nobles snatched his workshop, all because they hate seeing regular people actually make some money. Yuli admits he's got a good feeling about the guy, so Marius jokes that he should probably go thank the officials for it. Marius jumps in to help and even offers to build a freaking bomb, while Julius notices that even the most serious people are starting to totally lose their minds. Since he lives overseas, he invites Yulia to stay at his place, promising her a bed and 3 full meals a day. Julius is super thankful to take the deal, especially since he's always seen Mari as his absolute best friend. Marius gets super flustered and tells her to stop touching him, so Julia just tells him to go get things ready. The guy thanks the director for having him and says he's got to head out since it's late, but Marius tells him to hold on a second. Julius notices the castle's security is super tight because of all the people hunting for riches, but he's 100% sure his teleportation magic can blow right past them. He slips into the royal library, just praying that nobody's actually guarding the place. This young guy spots Elvins, the kingdom's top court magician, just chilling in the library. He's trying to stay low-key so he doesn't get busted, but Elvin sneezes so loud it almost blows their cover. Julius panics, realizes he's got to grab all the books he needs and get out of there right now. He snatches up the books, thinking he'd have way more freedom to search if his master wasn't holding him back. Julius is straight up terrified of Elvins and wants absolutely nothing to do with him. He finally grabs everything he needs and breathes a huge sigh of relief as he heads out of the library. He's hyped to finally see his master's face, but seeing all those gray hairs makes him hope the old man lives a long life. Suddenly, he realizes something is totally off and starts asking where the heck he even is. You're probably thinking he's the one who actually trashed the teleportation spell himself. Julius looks around, and his heart drops when he realizes he's standing right in the middle of a massive, empty coliseum. He didn't even mess up. Someone else actually went in and changed the coordinates. Elvin suddenly shows up and lets them know that leaving without saying hi is just straight-up rude. Julius was totally shocked when he blurted out Elvin's name, and Elvin just gave him a cold look, calling him his careless student. Elvin is super picky about being called Master Elvin instead of just Master, but Yuli just shrugs it off like it's no big deal. The Master catches the kid's attitude and demands to know why he messed with the travel coordinates. He smirks and calls Yulia a pathetic runaway student who's now just digging around like a common thief. The Master smirks and says they should at least say hello, but Yuli isn't having it and gets right into a fighting stance. Julius asks if all this craziness was really just for this one thing, and the Master promises to let him walk as long as he gives the right answer. Julius drops a sarcastic apology and tells them straight up that he's never coming back, and he's dead serious about it. The Master is totally losing it because Julius used that banned dimensional magic again. The guy tells him it's not his call and screams at the teacher to stop acting so full of himself. Teacher and student are staring each other down, and Julius knows that if he slips up for even a second, he's toast. Elvin calls his moves totally disgusting, but Julius fires back that he's not a mage anymore. He's become a brand new kind of alchemist. The master gives a sneaky smirk and says he finally gets what's going on. Elvin says that since he's an ex-teacher, he's got to punish the sloppy student, and Julius knows he's in huge trouble. He gears up for his ultimate finishing move and lets loose his strongest explosion magic with a massive, angry roar. Julius gets back on his feet and stares the master right in the face. The master sees right through him and knows he's only got basic tricks up his sleeve. He's totally stunned when he realizes Julius slapped a silence bracelet on him and completely shut down his magic. The master asks where he learned those tricks, and Yuli just says he met a guy who knows a thing or two. The guy asks if he wants to throw down, then smirks and says he's definitely gonna give up. He says a master shouldn't go easy on his student, and finally rips off his silence bracelet. But then he lands a brutal teacher's strike that leaves Julius gasping for air. He says adults are supposed to keep kids in line, and as a reward for the win, he hands him a dusty old book. The guy says he only wrote the book on alchemy because he was curious, but now that he's actually an alchemist, he's begging for forgiveness. He says he spent 3 whole years trying to get it back and worked like crazy to get those charges dropped. Julius is sobbing as he says thanks, and the master remembers wanting to send him back while they were wrecking the neighboring country. The master kicks his dumb student out, and Julius tells him to ditch Zwick and join his side instead. He shuts him down, saying adults aren't actually that free, and now Julius is freaking out that the whole estate will fall apart without a boss. Julius hands over the potion, swears it's not from his wife, and tells him he's got to take this gift. The master is freaking out because he knows if this secret gets out, the kingdom of Zweig is totally doomed. He smirks and says he's bored out of his mind, hoping he can finally kick back on the royal throne with a drink. Yuli remembers feeling totally crushed as a kid because he thought his master had ditched him, but now he finally realizes that wasn't the case at all. He admits he's still not even close to his level, while the master calls Shambhala a great place and says he's sorry to leave. The master says goodbye to his goofy student, and Yuli Shaley tells him to take it easy on the drinks. Julius vanishes through the portal, knowing it's finally time to head back to his new home. Back in Shambhala, the girls tell the mayor all about the crazy stuff they found in that maze under the lake. The mayor's jaw drops at those massive gems, and the girl totally agrees they're insane. The mayor says that if something happens twice, it's basically fate, and he's convinced the labyrinth is actually blessing them. Sierra asks if Maple's finally decided, and Maple says she's backing him up because he feels like a friend she's known her whole life. Maple just calls Sierra out for loving Julius, and after Sierra shyly admits she doesn't actually hate him, Maple totally agrees. She's acting all shy, but deep down, she knows she'd totally love being alone with him. Sierra gets all shy and starts wondering if he actually wants to hang out with her again. The servant says they're going to team up to make Master Yulia fall head over heels for them. Mayor is totally freaking out because he has to trick the guy into marrying his daughters, but he knows he has no other choice. The robot actually congratulates her on the big wedding, and she just laughs and says, "Thanks." The second Julius gets back, the robot calls him John, and he totally snaps, yelling that he's not John. Yuli asks where the rest of the crew is, but the robot tells her they've already taken off. He tells him to catch some rest until dinner, and Yuli's totally down, just asking to be woken up when the food is ready. The robot realizes it's finally time to pull out Plan B. She sits right next to the sleeping Yulia and says it was pure fate that he traveled thousands of miles just to find them. She's totally lost in her thoughts about him, so Julius asks why she looks so down. Yuli snaps awake at dawn and realizes he totally overslept. He's thinking that Trash Golem didn't even wake him up. Out of nowhere, he's totally shocked to find one of the girls crashed out right in his bed. The girl in bed says good morning to Julia, and he's totally shocked, asking what they're even doing there. The girls shyly claim they're just rearranging the beds, but Yuli shuts them down, calling it a totally weak excuse. Julie is totally fuming over what they're wearing, and while the girls claim they always dress like this, some guy starts screaming at them to stop lying. One of the girls snuggles right up to him and tells him he's way too cold and needs to warm up. The other sister jumps in to say their plan is working, while Yulia starts freaking out and screams that she's going too. Caught right in the middle, our guy is totally lost and has no clue how to handle these two. The sisters give him a sneaky, awkward look, and it's obvious they aren't backing down. Julius finally snaps and yells at them to stop right this second. The sisters keep messing with him, and one of them grins while asking if he's ever been in a spot like this before. Julius catches a weird scent and starts freaking out, screaming for everyone to get away from him right now. She starts sniffing his hair. One of them hypes up her sister, and the guy totally snaps and tells them to knock it off. One of them leans in and whispers that this is his prize for coming back, so he better enjoy every second of it. Yuli screams for a timeout, yelling that he just can't take it anymore. One girl laughs at him, says he always ruins the vibe, and asks why his stomach is growling so loud. She offers to whip up some breakfast, since she can't let her husband starve, and then she asks her sister to grab her some elvish water. With the girls totally distracted, Julius bolted out of the room, thinking that was way too close. The girls show up right at the door and swear he won't be getting away next time. Yuli just collapses straight onto the bed. She says sorry for not waking him up for the special feast she made, but he was knocked out so cold she didn't want to disturb him. Uli goes crazy over how good the food is, and while one sister is just happy he likes it, the other reveals her sibling actually practiced for a really long time. One sister heads off to hit the books, but the other one is already a step ahead with the scoop on that weird soil called conchelle. Julius finds a book about a crazy liquid that hardens instantly and can totally fix a frozen leaf. One of the sisters orders him to do it, but he flat out refuses and asks what the point even is. This tiny golem Naya pops up ready for work, making Julius totally freak out and yell at him to shut up while his sister keeps messing with him. Julius tells his golem to start hunting for spare change in the street, and while his sister is totally annoyed by the order, Naya is already on it. Julius can't believe how smart this golem is and remembers that these dungeons are famous for dropping super rare loot. One sister says Nia is super nice for helping her with the laundry, and the other thinks he looks like a cute little fairy. Julius thinks giants like this are super rare, but his sister is already chewing him out for giving Nia such a messed up order. One of the sisters asks you to find out what he's doing, and he gets all shy, saying he just wants to relax today. His sister flashes a big smile and asks him to go shopping with them, which totally catches him off guard. Yulia asks if they're going to fill him in, but one sister says he'll just have to wait and see it all for himself. The guy says he's got a bad feeling about this, but the girl just smiles and tells him he'll be happy, while the other person is 100% sure he's gonna love it. Yuli knows the sisters are acting totally sus, and after what happened this morning, he's definitely not letting his guard down. He says he wants to grab all the stuff for that cocktail while they're still in town. Kane offers to handle things, but Yuli refuses to back down, insisting this is his job and he's going to finish it perfectly. He finally scored some Trent materials and an earth crystal. She says the trendy materials are totally fine, but earth crystals are becoming super hard to find on the market. The girls start planning to dig a brand new labyrinth, and while Julius is down for it, he says his imports are going to take way too long to arrive. Julius is just wishing it was way easier to dig up those labyrinths as they finally step into the store. The elf shop owner, Amina, is super stoked to see the princesses and invites them right in. She says everything's good to go even though the dress isn't finished, but Julia's totally shocked when she hears about the veil. The sisters show off their wedding dresses and ask Yulia if he likes the look, but he's so stunned he can't even say a word. One of the sisters starts teasing him for staring, and Julius totally loses his cool, yelling for them to wait up. Yuli's jaw totally drops when he sees his sisters actually wearing real wedding dresses. He realizes they totally baited him here just to drop this hint, and he's so embarrassed he can't even look them in the eye. The sisters flash him a big smile, and Yuli just can't help himself, blurting out that they're way too cute. Kane keeps taunting him to go all out, and even though Julius tries to get her to chill, she's just not listening. He finally gives in and promises to take them shopping next time, then asks what else they're looking for. Kane says his goodbyes and tells her to handle the rest, while Julius asks where they're heading off to next. She tells him their next stop is actually a date, and Yuli is totally losing his mind. Kane smirks and asks if they were on a date since he's seeing Mabel, while a super shy Sierra just wants to get out of there. She reveals that she isn't actually the city leader's real daughter, just like Mabel and Sally. The girl explains the mayor is totally used to taking in orphans, while Yuli asks another girl where she's from, but she has no clue. He asks why she's called a princess, and she's not 100% sure, but says the old folks call her that because she might be from some tribe. Sierra says she got that name because she looks exactly like the queen who ruled this place back when it was still green. When the girl asks about his past, Yulia explains that his parents abandoned him at an orphanage, but a master eventually took him in and trained him to be a magician. She asks if he's ever dated anyone, and he gets so flustered, admitting he only likes guys that he literally chokes on his drink. She asks if he's got anyone special, and he straight up tells her he's got nobody. She suddenly asks him what he thinks about marriage, but he just shrugs it off, saying, for people like them, it's really just a political move. Sierra wonders if everyone is really like that, but he explains that's just how the fancy nobles act, and he's just a regular guy. She looks totally heartbroken and asks if he even likes her, and while Yuli gets all awkward trying to explain himself, she shuts him down and says it's all about their feelings. She turns away and whispers that she's not going through with the wedding her parents forced on her. Sierra doesn't hold back and tells him straight up that she's happy being with him. Julius is totally stunned and can't even say a word, so he just looks away because she's being way too real with him. Suddenly, Nia the golem showed up with a massive pile of coins, and Julius gave him some serious props for the haul. Julius gives Nia a huge pat on the back for being such a good boy, but then he decides to just head home since he's totally stuck on what to do. One of the advisors is totally losing it because Yulia's explanation for why Lake Mac vanished sounds like a total joke. He says they couldn't find a reason, and this guy was calling all the shots. But then another advisor walks up because he's never even heard the name Julia. The old man finally remembers the desert merchant and gives him the green light to speak. This old guy walks right up to the table, snatches the bag, and starts shouting for Julia. They head into the Adventurers Guild, where the leader, Gilliam, greets them with a big, warm smile. Julius is totally weirded out when Helium drops a hand on his shoulder and tells him to just call him Gaily. The boy asks if they have any earth crystals. Jilly wants to know why, but Julia jumps in and says it's a total secret. Gilly's got some bad news. They've officially run out of all their earthly crystals. Someone else explains that their guild is brand new and they're in a massive rush to grab the ingredients for a potion. The guy says it's time to start shipping their herbs out, and Yuli is totally down for the idea. The old guy realizes this is his big chance and starts teaming up with the merchant guilds to map out some trade routes. Yuli asks for more supplies and reveals he's got a secret weapon to dig through the labyrinth. The hero just smirks and says he's gonna dig up the whole earth and the dungeon, leaving the sisters totally stunned by his wild plan. Kane reminds everyone that the lake held them back before, But this desert is just way too massive. Julius just grins and scratches Mabel behind the ear, telling the cat she really shouldn't be doing that. The sisters are totally shocked by how fast she is, but Yuli tells them to chill because he's already got a plan. He pulls out a silver rod, and while Sierra's totally confused, Julius explains that this thing can actually track down labyrinths hidden deep underground. The guy suggests they split up to find the maze, and he's taking Tio along with him. Yuli and Tia are trekking across the massive desert on a camel, and Yuli mentions how awesome the day looks. The girl mentions that sandstorms are super rare in this country, and Julius tells her it's pretty much always sunny. Julius, blushing, admits he's actually feeling pretty nervous after how their last date went down. He's totally freaking out and has no clue where he's even supposed to look. Our hero gets super flustered and begs her to just ignore the reaction he's having down there. Tia tells him he needs to go wash up. He asks why she thinks he even likes bathing, and she just calls him out for doing it every single morning anyway. Julius totally freaks out when he catches her spying and tries to cover his tracks by saying he only looked because her hair was wet. She thanks him for the compliment, but he totally panics and yells at her to forget everything, realizing he messed up big time. He tries to shake the thought, but just can't. And right then, Tia notices the stick is pointing straight towards something. Julia says they finally found the labyrinth, so he tells her to back up while he busts through the entrance. She's totally freaking out, but he tells her he's got this, even though he's secretly terrified he's in way over his head. He slams the ground, causing a massive blast that rips open a hidden path deep underground. They finally track down the labyrinth, but it's a total letdown. And since Tia says the door is way too far, they've got to keep looking. She tells him she was totally freaking out when he went off all alone to save his wife. He thanks her, but she shuts him down, saying she came back because she wanted to, not because she was kidnapped. The hero tells her she's basically family, and just as she's getting all happy about it, they suddenly spot Mabel. Mabel finally spots exactly what they've been hunting for. They stumble onto the entrance of another huge labyrinth, and Yuli tells the crew to get some rest while they still have the chance. He flashes a sneaky grin and tells them they're finally about to crush this whole maze. His intense vibe is totally spooking the girls. One says her legs are already going cold, and another is just straight up freaked out by this side of him. Yuli says there's a massive underground maze in Zweig, and he's trying to figure out if it's the reason the climate is so weird. Tia warns him to be careful, but Yuli says he's totally used to this since he used to be a court magician. He remembers being thrown into those mazes hundreds of times to grind for cash while they pretended it was just training. Julius spots a turtle with a massive jewel on its shell and realizes the little guy has some seriously fast reflexes. It's actually a monster turtle that blows up the second you hit it, just like they said. Julius notices the turtle is starting to glow and shouts that it's self-destructing and about to blow up in seconds. The sisters were totally freaked out by this crazy monster, but Yuli calmed them down by saying it's actually a super rare species. Yulia says if these were the only monsters around, this maze would be a total breeze, and he's definitely right. He warns them the place is loaded with traps, but right then, one of the sisters triggers a floor tile and drops straight into a pit. They walked straight into a trap inside a house full of monsters, and now a ton of enemies are about to swarm them. They're totally surrounded by giant bats, earth gnomes, and rat people, and the sisters have no clue why there are so many of them. Sierra goes on the offensive, but her hits don't even scratch the golems, so she yells that they need to stop and figure out a new plan. Kane summons a massive wall of fire to roast the golems and starts cracking up because of how funny they look while they're burning. Mabel loses it and screams at a rat, making Tia wonder why on earth a cat is so scared of a mouse. She finally shakes off her fear and tells them straight up that she's doing it. Yuli shouts that he's the top adventurer in Shambhala and promises they'll prove it, getting everyone totally hyped to jump into the fight. They smash through the trap, and seeing how well they're working together, Julius asks if they're finally getting used to this crazy dungeon. The sisters both shout that they're not going to get used to this, but Yulia just smirks and tells him he's stuck with it anyway. Tia checks to see if Mabel is doing okay, and Mabel promises she's totally fine and will be right back. Our main guy walks right up to those giant doors where the big boss is hiding. Julius is totally caught off guard, and Tia thinks they should just call it the Labyrinth of the Precious Turtle instead. Suddenly, this massive turtle with a giant rock on its back shows up, and they're totally losing their minds. This is the ruinous royal turtle, a super rare species that almost never evolves because it's packed with tons of magical ore. Yuli's terrified the whole place will cave in if it blows, but Tia tells him to chill since no labyrinth has ever been wrecked by an explosion. Tia thinks they should just give up and die in the ruins, but Julia is ready to step up and take that giant turtle down. Yuli says it's only natural to want to take down a beast like that, but Mabel fires back that as a pro-adventurer, she gets that feeling way more than him. The hero thinks he can just use magic and come back later, but Tia totally loses it and screams at him to stop. Every single sister agrees we've got to be ready for anything because things could go sideways at any second. He figures if that turtle is about to blow up, he'll just slap a magic shield on it. Julius charges right in, screaming that he wants to crush this turtle more than anything. He sees the turtle start to glow and instantly knows it's bad news. Tia screams a warning, but her legs get stuck out of nowhere, and Sierra starts freaking out that they're all gonna die. Yulia shouts that even though she's huge, they're all the same to her, and she starts powering up his magic. He spawns a massive ice block and hurls it at the turtle, freezing it solid. Our hero gets to a safe spot, smirks, and tells the turtle to go boom. Mabel screams in pure terror as she realizes there's no way to stop the blast. Mabel snaps at Julia for not warning them about the blast, and even though he apologizes, the sisters are still totally clueless about what's going on. One sister screams that her legs won't move, so Julius begs Mabel for help since they're way closer to the blast zone than he ever intended. He offers to cook them a huge meal, but Tia just screams at him to get them out of there right now. Julius throws up a massive magic shield to keep all that falling debris from crushing everyone. Mabel's hyped that they're still in one piece, and Julius just plays it cool, reminding her he said they weren't gonna die today. They find a ton of earth crystals inside the cave, but when Tia checks on her sister, she still can't feel her legs at all. Julie looks down at her legs and realizes she's being hit with a petrifying poison, and she's totally losing it because she has no idea how this happened. Maybe they'll remember seeing that weird rat, and even though she's apologizing and blaming herself, Julius steps in to tell her it's totally fine. Tia asks for some fever meds, but Mabel is totally out, so the girl mentions they've got a special elixir instead. Sis says she already tried the elixir, but it's totally useless against the petrification. Julius is totally stunned that the elixir failed, but he was so locked into the battle he didn't even notice what went wrong. Tia breaks down in tears and begs Yulia to save her sister, because if they don't do something fast, she's going to die in just a few hours. The hurt sister says she's ready and tells Mabel to keep fighting, but she's honestly terrified of losing her. Mabel asks how she can help, and Julia tells her there's only one way to get her to the workshop. He says the cure for the stone curse is hidden in a book, and if he can just get those details, he'll be able to whip it up. Tia starts tearing up and says there's no way she could ever live without her sister. Julius promises he's going to save her sister and tells her he'll see her back at the workshop. He pulls Tia into a tight hug and promises he won't let her sister die, swearing to look after her from now on. While Yuli carries her on his back, the girl whispers to him, and he asks her what's going on. Julius begs her to stop talking, because he knows he'll be totally crushed if she dies. Sierra isn't shocked by the war for resources at all, saying that wherever there's wealth, you're definitely going to find a fight. She admits it's all her fault for snooping into his past, but now he's charging into that labyrinth totally unready. She's terrified Mabel will end up hating him if something happens to her, but he reminds her that losing someone can change anyone. She begs him to save her sister, and he promises he'll do it, but only if they pull it off together. Yulia is totally stunned that she can read his mind, telling him she sees everything, including his old name, Yuri, and the kind person he used to be. He screams that it's total madness to fuse their minds together and asks if this is even legal. Julius panics, gets hit with a massive wave of memories about her. He remembers this stunning girl who was the real-deal princess of Shambhala. Way back in the day, the Maharoba dynasty actually stepped up and brought every single elf in the world together. One single queen kept this whole empire peaceful for 1,000 years straight. But the legends say this massive empire was totally wiped out in just one night. After hundreds of years, she was finally born as the last great ancestor and the legendary 1,000-year-old queen of Zonicon. She flashes a grin, says her name is Sheila Zona Canatenis, and turns right back to her parents. She was named after her ancestors and treated like a total princess by her family, but her happy life was about to come crashing down. Her dad lost the fight for the throne, and now she's totally stuck because nobody actually treats her like a queen. Back when she was only 4, her dad walked in while she was staring at a portrait. Her dad looked super sad but totally serious as he told her she needed to listen up. He told them that he and his mum had to ditch this place and head somewhere super far away. The girl asks where they're headed, but her dad tells her the journey is way too dangerous for her to tag along. He says Sampala's got her back from now on, so they're leaving her in the mayor's hands. She asks how long she has to wait, and her parents say they'll come back for her once they find the missing queen. His mum says it could take 5, 10, or even 100 years. She chases after them, crying her eyes out, begging them to take her along, but her parents just say they're sorry and leave her behind. Yuli's totally shook by this memory and can't wrap his head around how anyone could forget something this huge. He says it's a childhood memory because he was ditched the very second he was born. He gets a flashback of a hooded woman leaving him right at the shelter doors. He looks at her and whispers, "Mom," but she just walks away without even glancing back. Yulia says this place is so wild, it even brings back memories you totally forgot about. He turns his back and says he can't even stand to look at this anymore. She cries out that her legs are getting heavy as the stone spreads fast, but Julius swears he's going to save her right away. She thanks him and then suddenly passes out, leaving Julius totally freaking out because he has no clue what's going on. She tells him she knew he'd come through for Shambhala, says she's so glad she picked him, and then she just vanishes into the portal. She begs him to save Shambhala for her, and as he pulls her into a hug, she completely passes out in his arms. She tells him she loves him more than anyone else in the world, and as he pulls her in close, he swears he won't let her die.